It's exam question time! Your favourite time! Genuinely! Today, we're going to be looking at how to answer a 16-mark "How far do you agree?" question. First things first, I'm talking about the type of question that appears as question 5/6 on paper 1 and question 4CI/4CII of paper 2 of the Edexcel 9-1 GCSE History exams. A 16-mark question is pretty much the same as a 12-mark question, but it has an introduction and a conclusion. Simple. The example I'm going to be using is from the topic Crime and Punishment, but the way I'm going to go through to answer this question will apply to 16-mark "How far do you agree?" questions from all topics. So here's the question. The most important factor in explaining witch hunts in the years circa 1500 to circa 1700 was religion. How far do you agree? You may use the following in your answer: Demonology, English Civil War. You must also include information of your own. A 16-mark question will be structured like this: Introduction, 3 paragraphs, conclusion. For each paragraph, just like with a 12-mark question, we're going to make 1 point. So we need 3 points, 1 for each paragraph. Luckily, the question has already provided us with our first 2 points: Demonology and the English Civil War. That means we only have to come up with a 3rd point. In this case, we could use Matthew Hopkins as our 3rd point. As 16-mark questions require an introduction, that's the first thing we need to write. Our introduction only needs to be 1 or 2 sentences, and we'll use it to introduce the 3 points we'll talk about in our 3 paragraphs. So it could go something like this. In the years circa 1500 to circa 1700, there was a series of witch hunts which affected many in England. There are several factors which contributed to these hunts, but some of the most prominent were James I's book, Demonology, the Civil War, and the work of Matthew Hopkins. This brings us on to our paragraphs. The structure we're going to use for our paragraphs is PEAL. That's point, evidence, explain, link. So we'll start with our first paragraph, on demonology. We can start each paragraph in pretty much the same way. The first reason for the witch hunts in the period circa 1500 to circa 1700 was, and then we make our point. James I's book, Demonology. We then move on to the next letter of PEAL, E, or evidence. Our evidence is our spend. Spend, for those of you who don't remember, is our statistics, places, events, names and dates. Originally published in 1597, and then again in 1603, the book gives justifications on why witchcraft should be punished severely. It is not just a crime against the king, but a crime against God. Moreover, it details on how to spot and trial witches, and promoted the idea of swimming a witch. The next letter in our structure is also E, but this time it's explain. Explain means showing how our evidence, our spend, links to the question and the point we're trying to make. So we could say, as James I held a position of respect and authority, King of England, his ideas were able to have major effects over others. It also actively encourages people to hunt witches themselves, causing them to do as such. However, James I's fear of witches came partially from his fear of Catholics, offering continuity with previous fears of witches caused by the gunpowder plot. The final step for us in our paragraph is L, link. This is linking it back to the question, essentially just repeating our point. Consequently, demonology supports that the most important factor in explaining witch hunts was religion. Then we repeat this process again for our second paragraph, which is on the English Civil War. A second reason for the witch hunts was the English Civil War. Point. The Civil War of 1642 to 51 caused chaos within Britain and resulted in the rule of Puritan Oliver Cromwell between 1651 and 1658. Evidence. This caused much religious tension, and the chaos resulted in a greater belief in superstition in England. Consequently, witches, who were blamed for many negative occurrences, were blamed for many of England's problems. This brought continuity with the rising trend of witch hunts. Explain. Thus, the Civil War, and consequently religion, were a significant reason in explaining the witch hunts. Link. And again, we do this for our third paragraph, which is on Matthew Hopkins. A final reason is the work of Witchfinder General Matthew Hopkins. Point. Hopkins operated in the years 1645 to 1647, getting local authorities to pay him to hunt out witches. He was the cause of the hanging of 180 people for witchcraft, and would gain confessions from them, which would include the names of other witches, offering continuity with previous hunts. Evidence. This means that he was able to continuously hunt more witches and make profits. Hopkins' witch hunts caused wild hysteria, as they brought to light witches previously totally unsuspected and spread the idea of witch hunting, consequently inspiring others. However, Hopkins' main motive was probably money. Explain. Thus, whilst the Matthew Hopkins witch hunts contribute an explanation, they do not support religion as the main explanation. Link. That leads us on to our conclusion. In our conclusion, we need to state whether or not we agree with the statement in the question. And we also need to briefly summarise the points we made and how they support our conclusion. In conclusion, religion was the main reason for the witch hunts of circa 1500 to circa 1700. That's showing whether we agree or disagree with the statement. In this case, we agree. Then we need to briefly summarise the points we made that got us to that conclusion. Ideas, many of which were based on religion and fear of Catholicism, brought forward in James I's Demonology, contributed to the witch hunts. Moreover, the Civil War and religious confusion it brought, with accusations of Charles I being a Catholic, caused a rise in superstition and consequently witch hunts. However, the Matthew Hopkins hunts suggest monetary gain, for as this is just a single case, it can be assumed that religion was indeed the main factor in explaining the witch hunts of circa 1500 to circa 1700. And that's it, we're done. There is one more thing I'd like to point out though. When responding to a 16-mark question from your thematic study, also known as your paper 1, as this topic is about changes through time, try to wherever possible use phrases like these to show that you understand this about the topic. So now for the final and most important step in this video. Practice! Yay! Hooray! Woo! Woo! In the description you can find a link to some example answers and practice questions. If not, they're not that difficult to find. And also, make your teacher mark your practice questions. If that doesn't work, find another teacher or give it a go at marking them yourself. Your teacher will hate you after you've given them your 3876th practice question to mark, but that's okay, because when you get a 9, they'll get a pay rise and they'll forgive you. It worked for me! Thanks for watching, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell all your friends. Also, don't forget to check out the resources in the description, and check out my Twitter, @alongtimeago_YT. Wesad, yay, holla.